Thank you, Catherine, and good afternoon to everyone. I guess good morning to those on the West Coast. Um, my name is Dan Bernali, and I am the assistant principal for academics at St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia. And a few years ago, we were concerned about trying to get more students involved in global programming and looking at a way to do it cost-free, and interact with schools that are even farther than our typical areas. And so, thanks to some connections, we were able to begin virtual partnerships. So we can't necessarily bring our students, all of them to the world, but we can bring the world in here, at least for a little bit. And so we began two digital pen pal partnerships, eventually Zoom calls with a school in Japan, south of Yokohama, called Eiko Gakuen, and a Campion in Mumbai, India. So they allowed us to open these programs with Japan and India that we had not been able to do beforehand. We hope that they will become actual exchanges at some point, but one of the problems that we have here, I don't know if you have it at your schools as well, is sometimes cutting past student apathy and convincing students that it's a productive experience to have people in their homes. And if the students are on board, so are the parents, and they're always on board after a virtual exchange. Once the person is no longer a stranger, they can kind of put a face, a personality with a name. It seems that they're more willing, and therefore their parents are more willing to host this person in their homes. So we're actually looking to turn the India exchange, digital exchange, into a real exchange, into a physical exchange next year. And Japan may also be that way. It began by teachers here talking with teachers there. There were major challenges, of course. The time difference makes it such that the students in Japan and in India will never be in class while we're in class. Um, and so we had to make it in such a way that our students would still be engaged. So we gave little tasks for them to do, tried to find mutual times like a 7 a.m. and a 7 p.m. Um, Sometimes they did it on their weekends and we asked them to report back what they had heard. Um, but it was very productive in having students realize that their neighbor is maybe 7,000 miles away, but isn't that different from them in many areas that matter. And they talked about the same music, they talked about the same, this and that, but then of course went into the differences of the cultures, which was really a great experience. There were praises and complaints about the same classes at both schools, and it really just involved a bunch of students that probably would not have been willing to go otherwise, to travel otherwise. And we were able to start it because I wasn't as worried about the maturity level because they weren't traveling yet. We were able to start this with groups of freshmen and sophomores who would then be able to travel to Japan and or India in their junior or senior years. So if anyone isn't more interested in that, I would be very happy to follow up and share the contacts that we've had at the two schools that we've used. But anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you just kind of let us know how I know you said you just started talking, but I think a lot of the questions I get is how did you actually get the connection moving?
In the case of India, we had an alumnus who had gone to India and worked there and found a connection with other Jesuit school alumni in India, and they formed a connection, and he brought it back to us, and we jumped on it. He was the personal connection. It doesn't work at either school, but was able to kind of join us in mission. And then in Japan, I think it was a cold email from them. They wrote an email to us one day. Um, they noticed that we didn't offer Japanese here, which we don't. I don't know if they saw that we had, I think even an anime club on the website. There was something they mentioned that called their attention to us, and we responded very, very willingly. In each case, I had a couple teachers that were very willing to jump on each situation and take ownership of running the basics for this, and that's how they really came to fruition.
Thank you. Does anyone, Dan has to run to class. Does anyone have any questions or anything you'd like to ask?
I'm curious, how did you overcome the time difference?
Well, we agreed not to do it during school days. Well, we realized we couldn't do it when both of our students were in school. So one group or the other was in school, and we trusted that the other group would do it from home. So we picked, I think for India one day, we had like 8 a.m. here. I think the students came in a little bit early, or 7:30, they came in a little bit early. And I think in India they stayed a little bit late, because by that point it was, I forget now if it was 5:30, 6:30 in the evening by that point. So we made it work. Japan's even harder. And so what we would just do is trust that the students would meet. We would say, 8:30 a.m. here, and then it would be 10:30 p.m. there, and students would stay up later, vice versa. So we just agreed that we couldn't do it from class to class. We had to give the students ownership of it, and we asked them to report back to the teachers who were managing it, so we could be somewhat sure that they kept up this partnership on their end. And parents, of course, had to give their consent because some of these things were occurring at relatively odd hours, right? We had students Zooming for school at 8:30 p.m., for example.
And maybe that consent form is something you could share with us even. I don't know if other people have that, but for people who haven't created that. And then I have a question, Trace, I see that you're on, have you used, and you talk about Padlet. Did you use Padlet or anything like that, Dan, in the back and forth?
I only recently learned about Padlet from this group. I learned about it. So actually, at the time, we did not. We just used on our end we were using Google Meet. On their end, they were using Zoom.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And I know you have to go, but thank you for, he had a schedule rearrangement after this was. So thank
Thank
you.
you,
And if
everybody.
anyone has questions, you can leave them with me and then we'll forward them on. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone. Thank
All
you,
right.
Catherine.
Bye-bye. And now we're going to pass over to Kiri, who also has class. So we're really talking about how do we create these virtual exchanges, these virtual partnerships. So Kiri, would you go ahead?
Yeah, hello, guten Tag. My name is Kyri, and I'm located in Seattle at Seattle Prep. Yeah, I'm in between two classes, so I'm not too rushed because today we had a late start because, when it snows in Seattle a teeny tiny little bit, only teeny tiny, like everything stops. So our school, there was not even snow on the ground, and our school had a late start. So everything is shifted a little bit, but yeah, I still have a class later. So I see many familiar faces, and I thank you for your inspiration. And without you, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be a global program coordinator at our school that is very well supported by our administration. So I thank you for all those, the motivation and inspirations. And yeah, so we already talked about the pen pals. Of course, during a virtual exchange, there's not that much that we can invent and do, but maybe I can give you a few practical examples. Even before having global programs at our school, and that's just new this school year, I've done it. I've been here for 16 years, so I've always done this. Just because I wanted to get the students out of the classroom, be exposed. So I'm, as you might hear in my accent, I'm the German teacher here, and our German program, unlike otherwise at the West Coast, is really strong. We have 7 classes, and I think it's really due to the fact that I have always tried to get the students out to the Christmas market or do exchanges or to just relate to peers in Germany or a German-speaking country, Austria, Switzerland, if I could. So pen pals I've done for many, many years, and I thought I would step it up a little bit now, being part of global programs of JSN, Educate Magis, which is, by the way, a great website also to find connections. I've looked around there, but of course I have my personal German connections. So once I'm mentioning German, maybe some of you who are teaching a different language can look around the German and instead use Spanish for it or whatever language you choose. But I looked last summer when I was in Germany. I thought, oh, why don't I look for a Jesuit school to form a closer relationship and a partnership? And I just wrote out of the blue. I wrote to a school and they wrote me back. I visited them with my son, and it was such a highlight of my summer. We were just there for like 4 hours maybe, and we were in different classes, met the administration. So now I just came out of class over there and I just gave them a list of names. Actually, I will have pen pals, email pals with 3 classes, and they just choose their names. The respective partner kind of, they chose names, and they are going to write their first email in German, introduce themselves. And then we will have like, I have like a little schedule here that I already showed them. First, we introduce ourselves. Then I have like teenage life topics that we can discuss. I have a whole list of that. I can actually also share that. And then I'm thinking to, again, step that up to like collaborative projects, virtual field trip. I wanted to try that. That's a new nice thing that I thought we could do. You know, I'm taking students every 2 years to Berlin. So maybe we can do a virtual field trip in a museum in Berlin and then talk about that. And once we have actually history in junior year right now. So that's where it just came from. So I thought virtual field trips amongst the virtual exchange, the pen pals, would be very good. And I've done it before, just not with pen pals together. So that's what I wanted to connect this year. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say about the digital pen pals. You know, a benefit is, of course, that students could potentially visit their pen pals. So my son, he's now a freshman at my school, and if he wants it or not, he's going to attend a week. He always does it in my hometown, but now I'm going to send him to a different city, and he's going to attend a week at the Jesuit school in Hamburg that we have pen pals with. And other students, of course, can do the same. I've had that once before, that I take students when I take them every 2 years, that we had pen pals, and they visited, besides their host, they visited those pen pals too. So it just gives a broader international connection. And how cool is that? They you know, went to a different country and stayed with the host family, and then said, oh, you know what? I know someone else in this city, and I'm going to meet them for dinner. So that's really special. Actually, I have a student right now who flew to Germany for 14 days. I hope, like, he took school off and he wants to explore and stay with his host family again and maybe study there. That's a little aside from it, but, you know, just fostering the relationship and the connections through a virtual exchange so that it reaches more students is just so valuable. And I wanted to tell you one thing. So I don't know if other languages have this, but, you know, GAP, right? Like the German-American Partnership Program, that has existed since 1972. I looked that up yesterday, how long it has been around, for a long time. And I just went to Minneapolis to a global leader conference of the organization that I do the trip with. And they showed us a website that was awesome. And maybe you can have that for your language or for your virtual exchanges. So it's called GAVE. That's new. And GAVE stands for German American Virtual Exchange. And I can post the website in the chat, but they have a website not only, but videos. They have a video of what a virtual exchange is. They have resources and offer webinars, how to start a virtual exchange. So I thought, even Catherine, for you, you could maybe use it for Educate Mages, maybe as a blueprint, because it's really well done, I think. And they even have like a little video clip of what a virtual exchange is. So I can post that if you wanted to, because they see the need also of students being exposed to the world, being global citizens, and how can they, when students cannot go into the respective country, how can they support that? And they stepped up and put that on their website. And that's a really great resource.
Definitely.
Yeah, I will post that after. And I think I'm nearly at the end. So maybe like 3 things that I do, practical things that I do in class. When I have my exchange program, and some of you, maybe all of you, some of you have exchange programs, the students usually stay in touch with their host. And then I Zoom them in. And again, if it's in the evening, doesn't matter for them. Usually they make the time. So when in senior year, I'm starting the topic of education in Germany, schools and universities. And I always have a good handful of students who I zoom in and they are at the projector. And my students, after they learned initially that, wow, universities are free in Germany, or school system is very different. And then they're going to ask those questions, discuss what they learned. So once you have an exchange, the students from that exchange, since they have been here and our students have been there, will remain in touch with us and be part of this virtual exchange that all students can benefit from. And then in person, that's not a virtual exchange, but it reaches all students. I mean, whenever I meet someone who speaks German here, of course, with Spanish speakers, that you have way more choices, but I'm like so excited. And I met someone a few months ago, a young woman from Austria on the playground. We exchanged numbers, we liked each other. And look at that, like all of a sudden I have a unit about Austria in my book. And I wrote to her and said, do you want to come in? Because I can talk about Austria, but for me, it's kind of fake because it's not my country and I just would read it and present it to you. And she will come in and present about Austria, bring a little treat. So that, that doesn't take much if you bring in native speakers from your community. And it makes a big difference to the students because they always listen to me and they always, I mean, they're not always listening to me, but they always see me in front of a class. And, stepping aside for me as the only native speaker in the classroom and inviting someone else is not a virtual exchange. It's like an in-person exchange between the students and the guests that we have, but that's also very, very beneficial. Oh, and maybe last thing, I don't know if you look online sometimes to see little, like I always try to find little competitions or so. So again, that connection to Europe that I would like to foster amongst my students, not only Germany, but to Europe. Like I came across the European Center for Modern Languages. They put out a website, they put out a competition and say, can you create a poster that is called Languages for Peace? And I did that with my students. And they said in Brussels, they would hang all the posters that are being sent there digitally. It's hanging over there, but I'm afraid I lose my connection, so I'm not leaving the room. But I hung it in the hallway. And that was also something creative. And it's not like a virtual one-on-one exchange, of course, but it's also something where the students step out. And I told them, look, this is where our poster was online. And they saw it, that was posted at the Council of European Languages, and that made them proud. And they stepped again outside of the classroom. Yeah, I think, oh, and our Chinese class, I don't do this, but our Chinese class is doing an exchange, which is awesome. I don't know if Germany has it or like I would like to pursue for my classes a little bit more that topic, or that route. But our Chinese teacher has a program. She connected her, I don't know if it's, I think junior students with students in Hong Kong, because they need to, in order to finish their studies. Like she wrote it to me this morning, but I didn't have time to look at it. But they have like a weekly connection between Hong Kong college students and our high school students. And the students need to fulfill, it's like service hours, but fulfill this in order to get their credentials from the university. Either they become a teacher, or I don't know what their route is yet. I need to look into that, but they are meeting weekly in the classroom. The Hong Kong college students Zoom in and they meet one-on-one. They each have a partner and learn, like, I don't know if they can speak in Chinese yet, our high school students, but learn about cultural aspects. And that is a really cool thing that our Chinese teacher is doing. Ooh, okay, I try to zoom through, that's all. If you have questions, let me know.
Wonderful. Any questions or quick responses? To follow up, Kiri, with what Dan was saying, I do remember when years ago when I had done pen pals that we did need to monitor at some level, the back and forth. Do you have a method of doing that?
That's interesting. No, I don't do it. Well, they use their school email.
Mhm.
So then automatically that is somewhat monitored, right? Because they have certain restrictions. It's not like middle school, but they have certain restrictions on those emails. So we are not communicating via private channels, but the St. Ansgar school in Hamburg sent me the students' emails of the school and said that's the only way we can communicate. So, but I'm not reading their emails, but you know what? Somehow I do, because I ask the students, and I've done it, as I said, many years. So we go over those emails in class. So they are sharing it. Some we throw at the board, and rather randomly, because I'm not, I'm just asking, look, 10 students who has a really nice email, and then I then I project it. And then we learn from that and have discussion topics. So I'm somewhat supervising, but it's a school email, and then that we should be on the safe side with. And I posted the link for anyone who would like to see it, like about the GAP, the German Virtual Exchange from the Goethe Institute. That seems to be really good quality and well thought through, if you want to take a look in the chat.
Thank you very much. And Aaron posted about requiring that the students CC. Anybody else that does pen pals or email exchange want to chime in? Let me ask this, is anybody else doing, I guess if you are doing email or any sort of back and forth with others, can you do your hand raise? Okay, so not so many. And well, we can wait till our conversation time. I'll be just curious about the pros and cons or whys. Thank you, Kiri, very much. I will tell you, when I was teaching, one of the things I had my students do is we went to like a Starbucks or McDonald's, like one of those places in Spanish-speaking country online, and I did have them fill out job applications. And it was really fun. I mean, we didn't actually submit them, but just that process, because it was an authentic process. So it made me think a little bit of some of the things that you're doing. It was a lot of fun. Because there's like, what is domicilio? Because we learned one word and then, all of a sudden it's different on an application. So it's kind of fun. Thank you very much. And I am going to pass over now to Chris Bela, who is going to share her partnerships virtual exchanges experience. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Yes, hello. I just wanted to really quickly, I knew I was going to talk next. I don't do pen pals right now, but I did several years ago. And I reviewed them by making kids like upload them to our learning platform, like whatever they were sending, they had to upload because they got a grade for it. And so I needed to grade what they were sending. I wasn't just going to assume that they were sending it. And so that's the way I monitored it, by making them like cut and paste and or take a screenshot or something like that and upload it to our learning management so that I could grade them. Anyways, totally different. We do an exchange, a virtual exchange with our Argentinian counterpart. And we've worked with Eugenia, and I met her through our Global Student Summit. And we started having conversation during one of those small teachers are all in the Zoom room chat combination. And I was like, I teach a Spanish conversation class. Would you be interested? Because she also taught an English class in doing some sort of an exchange. So we started in 2021 doing a virtual exchange with our classes. Our classes are on different schedules because they're in the Southern Hemisphere, we're in the Northern Hemisphere, therefore their school year is a different time than ours, but it actually works out just fine. My seniors need to have a full year, and hers can be at the beginning of their school year to have conversation. So it ends up working out just fine. We just have to, the timing, we're also, to Dan's point, we're also a little bit off on timing. I think Argentina, when we usually do this in May, is 3 hours ahead of us. So finding the time to virtually do this in person, like live, can be really challenging. But especially because it's hard for me to call kids when they're not in my classroom. So we kind of have to dictate, like it's during my class time, and Eugenia has been very, very flexible in being able to gather her students together when it's not particularly her class time. So I feel bad that in some ways the timing, she has to be more flexible than I'm able to be, but she has made it work. So the way that we've done it is we meet, generally it's just one time because it's so hard to schedule it, but we meet one time for 90 minutes. The first half of our time is in English, or I'm sorry, is in Spanish. And the kids are spending all that time talking about what is the Jesuit school? What is the schedule of your day? Kind of comparing and contrasting. How is your schedule different from our schedule? What do your retreats look like? What does your service look like? So really kind of getting the students to recognize that the things that we do as a Jesuit school are happening around the world in Jesuit schools, retreats, service requirements, what do the classes look like, things like that. So they get a chance to really see what are some of the differences, but also where are the vast similarities. They also spend some time talking about what they do in the weekends, what do they do on their free time. And all of these for us are different units that we have worked with during our conversation class. So we're talking about culture, but we're also, having those conversations. So we talk about education, we talk about, what do people spend their free time doing, all that kind of stuff. So it's all part of the curriculum. So the kids, my students, get a chance to practice those things and those conversations before we have the conversation with the Argentine students. And that's all in Spanish. Then the second part is we choose a particular topic that they have a conversation about in English. This is a much harder topic, therefore this is the one that's in English because the Argentine students are capable of it and ours are not. So we do this one in English. The last 4 years, the topic has been a choice of 2, and our kids divide themselves into groups, and each group kind of preps and prepares their topic. The one topic is on Che Guevara, like, is he an icon or not? Is he an icon or a villain? Should he be which one? And then the other is on the Cuba embargo. What is the Cuban embargo, and should we have it or should we not? These are things that both of our classes study in their history classes. So we're bringing in the history teachers as well to do a little bit of preparation. But this is also something that didn't necessarily have particularly to do with either one of our countries, but both topics touched both of our countries. So there's, Che Guevara is Argentine. He's from Cuba. So we just kind of like tied all of that together. In order them to have a conversation about something that's part of our history, that's part of both of our countries, but is separate from them, isn't really super personal for them at the same time. This year, we've been batting around the idea of switching it a little bit and maybe talking about the importance or the prevalence of AI in education, and or the usage of cell phones within a school, to kind of see what are different countries thinking about those things. Like, is this the same sort of problem in Argentina, or the same sort of struggles and issues in Argentina as it is here in the States, and allowing the kids to have a little bit of conversation about that. That wouldn't necessarily pull in the history teacher. That would probably be a little bit more just what's their opinion and what's their knowledge. So Eugenia and I may have to do a little bit more prep on that. So we'll see what we end up doing. But each of those conversations is about 45 minutes. That fills the 90, more or less. We have a little bit of prep at the beginning and a little bit of debrief at the end as well. The prep at the beginning is we allow each school to kind of do a virtual tour of their school. So the kids have pre-recorded, like walking around, and then they show a video of, hey, this is what our campus looks like. This is what our buildings look like. And they get a chance to kind of see what are the similarities and differences between that. So it's been a really awesome interchange between the two schools where we get a chance, Johanna and I both being language teachers, we get to delve into that, but then we're also building it on, like the Jesuit education, the Jesuit global network, and then a little bit of academics as well. So that's kind of our goal with that. So that's what I've done with one of my classes. One of my other colleagues did also, through her academic class, a poetry unit with a school in Italy, and they used Flipgrid, which is a similar to Padlet type of thing, but with video. And the teachers also have access to all of the videos that the kids put on to Flipgrid. And so she would have her students read a poem that was part of their curriculum, do some analyzation, and do some and ask some discussion questions in their video, and then they would send that video to their Italian counterpart school, and small groups of students would work on individual videos. So, like maybe 3 kids to a video. And then in Italy, they also split their students up, 3 kids to a video as well. They would read the same poem, listen to the analyzation, and then respond to the discussion questions. And then they did the same thing with a poem that they would read that was part of their curriculum, analyze their Italian poem, share a little bit of information about it, ask some discussion questions, and send it back. Now, obviously, this one, we don't offer Italian at our school, so the whole thing was done in English. And I believe that she worked with the English teacher in the Italian school in order to have this project. And they ended up with Flipgrid because of the time change. It was too hard to find time together for them both to actually go back and forth in person. And so the Flipgrid was the closest thing that they could come up with, where the kids would still be hearing each other, seeing each other, but not on the same time. And so I think they did that for the whole unit. Like they went back and forth during their poetry unit. So those are just some examples.
Thank you.